Hello and welcome to the first of Talking Asperger's with Andrew for 2022. Can't believe it's 2022. We're in the third decade of the 22nd century, 21st century. That's just bizarre. It's great to see you all here. Hope you've had a good festive season and new year. And I want to talk to you about something that catches me out a lot, and that is filters, or rather not having filters. And what I mean by that is when you're in a group of people, conversation or work situation, and you're asked a question or you get the urge to say something, and I just say something, what's in my head. I don't put it through a filter of, is this appropriate? Is this the right thing to say? Am I going to judge the tone correct? Is the language going to be correct? I will just come out and say it. And that has several responses. One can be, oh my God, where did you come out with that? That's really rude. Or, I don't understand how you got that. We're not talking about that at all. And I'm completely on a different page to everyone else because I've thought of something different. Or just a blank look on people's faces. Or the fourth one is, Andrew, that's not appropriate. That really isn't appropriate. And I was wondering if, and Leslie's laughing there. Thank you, Leslie. I heard you from downstairs.
I haven't uttered a sound.
I heard you. And for my hearing, with headphones on, that takes some doing. I heard you. But I was just wondering if anyone else has experience of saying things and not getting the reaction that you thought you would get, and that other people's have then expressed a concern about what you've said. Is that something you have, Damien?
Yes, I have two reactions. Well, maybe two reactions. One is how could you say that? And I would consider it just a normal thing to say, and people might consider it either rude or to the point or a bit abrupt or lacking diplomacy. And again, I suppose the other thing is, sometimes I do come up with things which are maybe slightly off subject, or I consider them to be on the same joined to that subject, but other people don't see the connection. Maybe.
Yeah. I quite often get told that I come out with left field things when it's just normal thought to me, and people think, how did you come up with that? That's bizarre. But when you talk to them about it, then you get I can see where you come from sometimes. But the appearance of rude conversation is something that I have had, and I just wondering, is it something you've had, Chris, where people have said that wasn't really appropriate thing to say?
I don't think so much inappropriate as possibly a little bit hard-hitting, blunt. Mm-hmm. So possibly not thinking enough around how it will be received, rather than saying something that's obvious and factual. But certainly regularly get, where did that come from? You know, how did that come about? So yeah, certainly aware that there's a different thought process going on in the conversation, and not necessarily in tune with what people are expecting to happen.
I understand that. I'm going to tell you one particular occasion when I was about 16. My brothers had left home and gone off to pursue their careers, and my dad was working overseas, so it's just me and my mum. And one day, Mum had made a salad, and she'd put the salad on the table. And I went, oh, my God, you're not going to eat all that, are you? And I was absolutely lambasted. I mean, I got read the riot act. How dare you be so rude? That's outrageous. My mother went to town on me because she had a big plate of food in front of her. Now, it was all salad. Because I just said it, like, you're not going to eat all of that, are you? I got both barrels and a hand grenade thrown back at me, and it got sent to my room after dinner, and the whole 9 yards of not acceptable behavior. But it was just in my head. It was a big plate of food, and it just came out. And yeah, I got well and truly lambasted for that one. Yeah,
I'm afraid that happens to neurotypicals as well. And it does, there are occasions with some neurotypicals like me, although I'm not entirely sure I'm totally neurotypical. We have discussed there might be some ADHD there. There were occasions where being quite blunt was quite useful. And instead of trying to mollycoddle or to, try and make someone feel okay about things, when actually it wasn't, a good dose of the truth would usually come out from me. And people look at me when it happens. How can you do that? How can you say that? Because I'm not going to be a hypocrite. If, this person and I have not been getting on and I don't like them and I don't like how they've done or what they've been doing, and I think that their work is substandard or whatever, I'm not going to go running in when they're leaving. And this particular time it happened. This girl was leaving the work, and I went in and I said to her, well, it's been interesting. And she said, is that a good thing? Interesting. And I had to say to her, don't push your luck, because I will tell you, just leave it there. And the rest of the girls were kind of, oh, how can you say that? That's so bad. How can you say that? Because I'm not going to tell her something that's not true. Mm. And I think that in some cases, Asperger's and autistic spectrum-wise, that kind of bluntness is a little bit refreshing at times. And it's more or less a case of the neurotypicals coming around and saying, well, you just can't say that in polite society. However, if we said it more, we might not be in the fankle that we get into in polite society. What do you guys think?
I think you're right. Sometimes people think the phrase "doesn't suffer fools gladly" is a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. And, it's been said of me, "doesn't suffer fools gladly." And I tend to think that's quite a good thing if you're aware of what it is that you're saying. Going back to what Andrew was saying, sometimes I feel that the issue can be you're sitting in a meeting or you're in a conversation and you've said nothing. So I don't engage in the chit chat or the frills that are around things. And then the first thing I do say is quite direct and hard hitting. I see it as incisive and insightful and factually contributing to the discussion. But of course, it comes from a position of silence where I've been listening and processing, and then throw it out there, and it's like boom, big hand grenade in the discussion, and I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that, because I can remember times in meetings, particularly with clients on sites, where something would be going on, and just as you said there, Chris, I'll be sitting quietly listening, and then I will come out with something, and it's like, wow, where did that come from? But the client's going, oh, that's interesting. What do you mean by that? And we actually move the discussion and we get progress on what we're doing, rather than, as you say, listening to the flim flam and the chit chat of dancing around the edge of something, when actually, let's get to the hub of the problem. This is my opinion, bang, that's it. And so sometimes, as you say, it's received very refreshingly, but other times that very same episode, when you finish the meeting and you're outside talking to your boss, they can go, no, I didn't really like what you did there. Although we had a good outcome from it, I think you pushed the boundaries a bit there. And I said, what? Client asked for my opinion. If you don't want me to give an opinion, don't have me at the meeting. And then you're called disruptive, and you're being not a team player, and all of those things that we get that come out. All of those things. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It was kind of an analogy made at one point, and pardon me for going back to dogs, but it wasn't a dog obedience class situation, but it kind of extrapolates out into this. And it's a case of, we were talking about GSDs at the time, and one of the women said, if you can't drive it, don't buy it. And that's kind of like going into this idea of, how dare you do this? I don't understand what you're doing. And what you're trying to do, Andrew, I think is right on this road. If you can't drive it, don't employ it. Yeah. Because you're not just employing the person, you're employing everything that the person is and everything that the person comes with. And that has to be taken into consideration. Just because it's not within your ken doesn't mean that it's inappropriate, doesn't mean that it shouldn't be allowed. But there has to be more openness, because if we don't have that, then we have no communication. in some ways.
I agree. I mean, I when I give talks, I quite often use the phrase, if you always employ the same type of person doing the same type of thing, you're going to get the same type of result. So if you want to find out something new and innovative, then you need to have people who think in a different way and can express that. So you can't have the business moving forward with great new ideas, new products, new services, but still expect everyone to sit within this tight confines of what they should be doing. You've got to allow the freedom of expression in order to get the new ideas to come forward.
And that's what causes conflict.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what causes traction and friction. And that basically has to be seen as a good thing, because if you can step back and take that into perspective, you can see where people have become too comfortable in their rut, in their groove, and you can see where the new idea is coming and whether or not it's going to fit, whether it just needs the rough edges taken off of it. You know, and I think that we're too far in here sometimes.
Yeah. The diversity and inclusion discussion rarely covers enough about cognitive diversity. And, you know, it's human nature for people to surround themselves with people they feel comfortable with, people like themselves. And that's where the diversity gets squeezed.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. We need to have a far more open discussion about diversity from all its concepts. You know, not just people with being neurotypical or neurodivergent, but all forms of diversity, be it ethnicity, be it color, be it language, culture. We need to understand that other people with different ideas, different backgrounds have also got something important to bring to the table.
And we need to believe that we can have that open and frank discussion without someone else having this complete trigger knee-jerk reaction to jump in with an ism.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to psychological safety in the workplace and people being allowed to contribute in the way that they like to work. And, you know, that's not a free-for-all. That's not all rules cancelled. It's about having the confidence to contribute it in the way that works best for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have had the experience where going into a new practice, my new boss was trying to insist to tell me what I should use to do a certain procedure. And because I'm quite leery and I'm quite mouthy and straight up front and Scottish, I said to him, I will do it my way, which for me is the right way. Because if I try to do it your way, I'm going to mess it up because I'm not practiced with that instrumentation or that product. So I will do it this way. And if you don't like what I do, then you can ask me to leave. And so he got the idea then that basically leave me alone and let me go.
I remember many years ago, this was 20 plus years ago, I was on a particular project and I was working for quite a long time on it. And I said to my boss one Monday morning, look, I can actually get more done if I go home and do this and work from home for the week. I can give you my phone number if you need me, but that suits me better because then I'm not having all the clutter and the chitter chatter and the noise of what's going on around the office and people arguing over there and that conversation going on and that conversation going on. I'm much better being able to go home and sit and work at this. I've got all the stuff. I can take a box full of stuff home with me, do the work, and I can come back on Friday afternoon and brief you about what's been done. And I will get more done in that week than if I was sat here getting interrupted by people and having the noise and the chit chat. This was way before I knew I had Asperger's, but it you know, what do you think about it, Damien? How do you cope with working in a different way?
Yeah, I found I work my worst work is when I try to do the job as the director wants me to do it. But since I've gained a bit more confidence, let me do it my way, and look at the results. No, you look at results, not necessarily every single part of the method. I do a much better job. The other thing is I in the main office where I work, I quite find that certain times of the day I can't concentrate because people come in and start talking to me. And if I know I have a piece of work to do that I need to really concentrate on, I go to, well, there's a little shed that I go to when I really need to concentrate. And it's, I'm on my own. In fact, it was an excuse because when the COVID started, the director said that everyone should look to have somewhere else to work so that everyone's not in the office. So I immediately cleaned out an old shed that I use, and it's also, I found it very good for times I really need to concentrate. I think my work output goes up by about 70%, and the quality is much better when I know that particular job. I come here and I do.
Yep.
I can work on my own.
Yeah, you've got the focus to do it. You know exactly what you're doing.
It's giving me the freedom to change the method, but with the same aim as what everyone wants. And so I normally do better. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's that trust thing with someone where they think, well, then they think they can still do this, but not be at their desk. They're going to be somewhere else.
Some people don't trust that.
No, they don't trust that.
Quite often people say, "Oh, where's Damien? Is he not in?" And then, of course, they see my car on the other side of the farm, beside the shed, and so people assume that if you're not sitting there with everyone else, that you're not working. But it's the opposite with me, because quite often I can be sat in an open office, and after an hour, find that I've done nothing.
Yes,
it's very much like the old idea of the guy walking around making sure that everybody's at their station doing what they should do and how they should do it and in what kind of time frame they should do it in. And I was thinking when you were talking there about how in radio stations and on film sets they have the red light. When the red light is on, do not enter. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, but that wouldn't work these days to a certain extent in office situations, because somebody's always got something more important than what the red light is telling them what to do. And I think that that's the reason why it's so important now to be able to say, I need my isolated spot. I need to have a spot where I can, even if you're desk surfing somewhere, there were, before this situation, there were areas where you could go in, you could have a quiet room. And you paid for that hour or 2 hours that you were working there. Because, of course, now it's so much more difficult to work from home because you've probably got all the kids, the dog, the cat, you know, the whole thing going on, and everybody phoning or chatting using the broadband, and not really getting anywhere to a certain extent, unless you have the boundaries put in place.
I remember I was always an early bird when I was working in consultancy, and so I could be at work 7:30, quarter to eight in the morning. And that first hour and a half before most other people got in, I was way more productive than when everyone was in, and the chit chat and what was on EastEnders last night, and did you know what happened with? I don't care. Just leave me alone. I want to get on with my work. But that first hour or so before anyone came in, I got 2 or 3 hours worth of work done because there was no one distracting me, and I was just in focused work. And I think we've started to realize that now with COVID coming in, that people can work productively in a different situation. But as we said, it's the trust thing, and it's allowing someone to have that freedom of expression to do that. And it comes back to the original point about filters. You need to trust people to be able to say what they feel and say what they think to try and move something on, rather than continually browbeat them down to conform to someone else's version of what a norm and acceptable conduct is. I think it's really important that people are given the opportunity to speak.
I think sometimes it's the fact that you do it, that you have a limited filter or no filter at all in some cases. It's the shock value. The shock value is like the red light outside the door, don't go there. Stop now. But it's also a case of why? You know, what is going on? Instead of just, you know, you say something like I said to my boss, the guy who could fire me and could, you know, take my living away. Instead of just saying, no, I'm not going to do that because I prefer to do this. He was not used to that, being spoken to that way by anybody, even his equals. But, you know, it was a case of, oh, well then, let's see what she does. So there was a curiosity there. There was a, well, this is new. I wonder what's going to happen next. And so I was allowed to do it. And he saw the advantages in doing that. But also, when it comes to, there are certain things where you cannot be polite. You need to not have filter. You need to not suffer fools gladly, because basically there could be lives at stake.
Oh yeah.
So you're going to get shorthand. And if we feel in ourselves that this is that situation and we're already stressed, then the filters have gone out the window.
I agree with that. I mean, on construction sites, if you see something that's unsafe, then yeah, stop doing that right now. And the forcefulness and the authority in your voice will come out. And if you need to grab someone, physically grab hold of them and pull them back from something or stop them doing something, then that's what you have to do. And if someone shouts at you afterwards, then so be it. But you have to, that need for the authority approach and the direct approach is really important when looking at something like that. I mean, the number of times I've seen something that's not safe, just go, no, stop doing that right now. And they look at you and think, what? Stop, back away, step away. And then you explain to them what was about to happen had they gone on, and they go, oh, I didn't notice that. No, I did. That's why we've stopped. So that forwardness, that bluntness can be very important and very necessary sometimes.
Found with surgeons. They don't have to have a bedside manner. All they need to do is be good with a knife. And, the knife becomes also the way that they speak to you in this clipped tone and not even seeing you as a person kind of thing. And that's a way of filtering out the emotion. And I think that is part of it as well, because we have to realize that as human beings, we do that. We tend to make our own borders, our own boundaries, but it's explaining them to anybody else. And why should we? Because it's what's right for us. And a lot of people can't accept that because their insecurity, their borders, their stresses don't allow them to. And they see it as something that is just weird. And that word weird has an umbrella situation. It's a spectrum in itself. But at the same time, if something is unacceptable to someone and you're not in a space to be able to vocalize or explain what it is that you're feeling or doing at the time, then you need to have the time and space to be able to communicate that. And I think that is part of the big problem, the big issue with what's going on between neurotypical and neurodiverse in the workplace.
Absolutely. Interesting topic. I think the more experience you have of a particular work situation and working with certain people, you can perhaps get a better feel for someone's borders and their boundaries. But I think it's important that we make sure that we set our own, and people have to respect that. And working in a big sort of open plan office situation it can be quite a tough environment because there are so many little things going on. There's the little conversation over there. There's a conversation over there. Someone's on the phone. I mean, I remember one of my colleagues being on the phone, and he was actually talking to a client. And the way that it was set up was we were using the client as a sub-consultant on a certain particular aspect of the work. So it was in the role as a sub-consultant that my colleague was speaking to this person who was also our client. And I wasn't trying to listen, but I was working, but you couldn't not hear him talk in the office. And he said something, and it made every single one of us stop and look towards him. He said, "Now you're just being childish." And then his demeanor changed, and he went, and then he gave his name and his title and his position, and you heard him mention who the name of the director was, because you could tell the conversation on the other end of the phone was, "I've had enough of this. That's not acceptable. I want your name. I want to know who you are. I want to know who your director is, because he's going to hear from me very soon." So that sort of situation happens where he overstepped the mark, and it was quite interesting to see how he handled it. But his whole demeanor changed. It was almost like someone had stuck a board up his back, and he stiffened up and very regimental about it. And yeah, we did get a letter in from the client about that. I heard about that. I didn't see the letter, but I heard about it. Yeah, it was an interesting situation because he'd overstepped his mark. What do you think on this, Damien? Any thoughts?
I'm not really sure. You're saying you're listening to a conversation then on?
Yes. Conversation was going on somewhere else in the office, literally sort of just next door to me, on the desk next to me. And he overstepped the mark. And he was more senior than me. He was more senior than me, and he overstepped the mark to the client.
Those sort of conversations are difficult in a sort of public environment, aren't they?
Yeah, it was. But it was the reaction that we had when he said, "Now you're just being childish," to the client on the telephone. It just changed everything about that whole situation, and we just all looked at each other and thought, "Oh my God, what is going on?"
It's a very sort of emotive thing to say, isn't it? I don't think I'd ever turn something, a factual conversation, into some. When you start saying emotive things, I really hate it in when people in the work environment use sort of emotive conversations or make emotive comments that you can't really, are not really factual, are not really based on anything. Like someone says something's messy, or some piece of work is messy. I think, what is that? You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean?
I think there's a real risk with some of these stock phrases like, "Now you're just being childish," that they're in the back of your mind, and you get to a point where you run out of other things to say, and one of these stock phrases comes forwards, and it can be used. I think that's a risk for anybody, not just anybody with a particular way of working. I think when you run out of answers, sometimes these stock phrases can just trip out from your past. I was very interested in what Leslie was saying about needing to be given the time to express your boundaries, because I think that's an issue that I've faced, where because I'm taking everything in and not necessarily interacting, I'm listening quietly, there can be an escalation, and you can almost see that escalation in the conversation you were overhearing. Things weren't going well and it was being escalated until had to be put a halt to. But the halt was at the sort of crisis point. It was an outburst. And I can feel myself being pushed into that, because you're listening to things going on and your boundaries are being pushed or broken. But the conversation moves on before you can actually say, "I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable with that." And maybe that was something that's happening in that conversation. It was going at too fast a pace with no ability to process and think, what's the best way to express that my boundaries are being trampled here? And then it does come as an explosion. There's a bang, I'm not willing to take any more. And it's a surprise to the person on the other side, because they didn't know they pushed you that far. So, the fact that it was going to become a formal complaint is unfortunate, but you could see how it would potentially escalate like that. And I've felt myself in that situation. And you either explode or you swallow it, you keep it inside yourself, and you go out feeling very, very unhappy and stressed, and have to go and explode somewhere else. I'm lucky I can sort of vent stress later and just let it dissipate, but it doesn't mean that you've actually established your boundaries and that it won't happen again. It will happen again next time you go back into that room.
Yeah.
There is one other way to not do it, and that is to stay quiet when the other person is going on, is just to stay quiet and let them run out of speed.
Yeah.
And then allow that cessation to change the energy.
Yeah.
And to
as long as that withdrawal into quietness isn't really passive aggression. If you're using it to allow them to dissipate, and
it's
then
case
start with a calm follow-on.
When you get that stock phrase coming in, and you're about to say, "Well, that's just stupid," or "That's so childish," or something like that. I mean, for me, that stupid is a trigger word. It's a real trigger word. And I would most likely blow my top at that. However, or go quiet, which can be even worse. And it's one of those things that it's taking a step back and saying, they don't know you personally. This is them. This is something to do with them. It's not got to do with you. So allow that to go and see where they're going with it. Even if they don't know, they're going somewhere with it. And then allow that to just be put out on the table in front of you. And just leave it there, because it's not yours to pick up.
I agree with that.
And so then you're not swallowing something that's not yours. And it's not staying with you and living rent-free in your head for the rest of the day or the week or the rest of your life if you get sacked because of it. And it's one of those things that if we could, and I think this is part of the issue with that we listen to answer, we don't listen to hear. And we don't take the time, we don't take a breath to think, right, they've said that. Now, I know that there's something that I want to say. I've got to say this, and it's in there. However, they've kind of just taken me slightly away from there. So is it so important that I do that or not? And I think that we could be taught better in communication, particularly at school, perhaps, that early, to not just totally, but yes, and this is this, and this is this. And that's just stupid because I know this, and it's an opinion, not a fact. It's emotion. It's not conversation.
Yeah, I think the emotional side of thing is a whole other topic that we could go on for quite some time. But I'm conscious that the time clock is ticking down on me, and I was just wondering if, before we close, whether anyone had any other topics that would like me to cover. I know that Laura gave me one on their last session for future sessions, whether there's any particular topics that you'd like me to talk about. Otherwise, I've got some notes and ideas from today, and we'll be posting next week's topic up on Friday afternoon, as I usually do. So thank you all for coming. It's been great talking to you, and I hope to see you all again. So let's just